Hi, this is Amir Anzur, Dean of Webpreneur University. Today I have Michael Lechter with me, who is an expert in helping people raise money for their startup ventures and also in intellectual property. So it's really interesting topics because, of course, getting your business off the ground, you don't have any money, you don't have any funds, how are you going to do it? Which is the first thing we're going to talk about. And then secondly, if you do have that great idea and you've spent months thinking about it and creating something, and a lot more of the assets in this new economy are virtual. You know, there's nothing tangible to hold. How can you protect it? How can you protect your property and monetize it? So, Michael, thanks for being on.
Thank you, Amir.
So, Michael, just explain a little bit about other people's money.
Other people's money. Well, you don't need money to make money. At least you don't need your own money. What you can do, if you've got an idea, is bring in other people, partner with them.
Yeah.
Create your own mastermind. You find people that have got the resources that you don't have, and you bring them into the venture. You contribute your idea, they contribute whatever resources it is that they have that you need.
Okay, so what might be examples of that?
Well, let's say that you've got an idea and you want to build a prototype, but you don't have the skills to do that yourself.
Yeah.
So you would bring in someone that has those skills and has the equipment. Now, you could pay them to do that, but what if you don't have any money? Well, you go to them and you bring them in as a partner.
Okay.
And they contribute that resource, the skills and the equipment to make the prototype. In return for that, you would give them a percentage of the business.
So an example in a web business might be that you need a website built. You'll find a technical person. You say, "I'll give you X percentage if you build it for me."
Precisely. If you have the money, in the long term, if you're successful, it would be cheaper just to pay them.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the money, and the only way you can get off the ground is to share.
Okay.
You bring them in, you give them a percentage of the business, or what you might call a profit interest, where you would pay them a percentage of the money that comes in until you reach a certain point, until they're paid.
And because this, typically what happens is people end up just going with their friends, right? Because that's the person who was the closest to them, and they just pitch the idea. How can you protect it that they don't deliver? Then you're stuck in this agreement, and you're giving away 20% of your company to someone that built you a bad site, right?
You have to be very careful about that, particularly when you're talking about friends and family. You have to be very, very formal about your business dealings. Because there's a real danger. Not only do you have your typical dangers inherent in business, but you've got the family dynamics and the dynamics with your friendship. If something goes wrong with the business and you're in business with your brother-in-law, what happens if the business goes south? And anyway.
Yeah.
So. I've forgotten the question.
That's a great point, because especially in the East, it's a lot more family-based businesses, right? So you do have that.
So what you want to do is make sure you've got a very, very clear understanding, and that clear understanding should be in writing.
Yeah.
You don't want to rely on people's memories, because memories change and memories are very selective. If it's written out and you're very, very specific in the agreement as to who's going to do what and when, and who's going to own what, then you're much better off.
But in essence, people can start their ideas. What are some of the innovative ways that you've seen businesses start up? That is it mostly around partnership, or?
Well, some form of business entity where they're giving equity or a profit interest, a royalty in effect on products. Generally, it's just a matter of putting together the people that have the resources that you need and teaming up.
Okay.
It's all about networking.
Yeah. So building the right networks and then making sure you're doing that along the way in your career before you even have an idea, perhaps, right?
That's right, because you need to know where the resources are.
Yeah.
And how are you going to find these people? Well, you join organizations, you get involved with charities, you get the skills you learn, and you meet the people.
Okay, great stuff. And another topic that you're really into and been teaching since 70s or working in is intellectual property, right? And protecting your assets, intellectual assets. Now, this is really a hot topic, especially in this region where it's going through a transition of having things being copied to now, people creating brands in this region. They want to protect their ideas. How can they do that?
Well, first and foremost, you're going to want to push to get good intellectual property laws in place and enforced. You'll find that you need to give incentive to industry. People are going to be much less likely to spend money developing products if their product is going to be copied as soon as it gets on the market. That's the reason why you need to have strong intellectual property laws. In the absence of those laws, you try to keep things secret, which doesn't build your technological base, or you use practical protections. Use the fact that it's being copied to build other aspects of your business. For example, there's a saying that for every one copy sold in certain parts of the world, there will be 10 unauthorized copies that are made. Well, you turn those unauthorized copies into advertising for your other products. Build advertising. You recognize that they're going to be copies made. So take advantage of that.
This is actually awesome advice. I'm actually going through this same process right now, and we just had a talk earlier. And this is what I'm doing, just as an example, and asking Michael's help on that, is I have a brand called End Passportism, which I'll produce a book, get it out, and saying, that used to be the color of your skin, now it's the color of your passport, which determines, the jobs you can get and all this stuff. And I have different brands, right? So Your Pal, and these are, I'm originally from Pakistan, so I look at branding of countries, right? So turning their shapes around, or Smile India, making India a smilier, happier brand, right? So the idea is, and I was having that same idea that you're talking about, which is how do I protect that? Because before I went down the non-profit route, I realized then I could not do it, right?
Yeah, the problem with non-profit is that it's non-profit.
Yeah, so I could not spend my time doing it. But now what I figured out is, okay, at least if I know it's going to be copied, I integrate my website onto it. And that's what you're advising, right?
Yes, and you want to make sure that you use the same figures and color schemes on a variety of different products. So if they copy one, they're in effect advertising your other products.
Okay.
It's all about building the brands.
Awesome. So in your, you advised on Rich Dad Poor Dad, for instance, and you were saying they had the same color scheme.
Yes, you want to make you want to build distinctiveness into your products.
Yeah.
For example, the Rich Dad books in China were known as the Purple Storm because they had a purple and black color scheme, and that was very intentional. Anytime you saw a book with that color scheme, you knew that it was a Rich Dad book. Likewise, we've developed our own Mastermind Leverage series that will have this blue and black color scheme with the fulcrum to show the leverage. And all of the products will have those common elements, so that they cross-sell each other.
Okay, perfect. So what you're saying is, know that the fact that your products are going to be copied, but use it to integrate in your advertising or have some other benefit out of it.
That's right. So it's a cost of doing business. You know, if 10 unauthorized copies will cause people to buy 5 authorized copies, you want to make sure you're ahead of the game.
Okay, perfect. And you advised countries on intellectual property as well.
Yes, I did some speaking for sponsored by the UN. Went to Brazil, went to Indonesia to talk about the need for strong intellectual property laws. Now, this was decades ago. What you'll find is that when industry is just developing in a country, they don't think that they need to have those strong laws. But as the industry develops in that country and the local industry is starting to feel the effects of the copies, the unauthorized copies, they realize just exactly why they have to have the strong laws and the strong enforcement mechanisms, the courts, in order to be successful.
Okay, and just a question on TM. These are technical
yes.
questions. So if you have a product and you put a TM next to it, trademark, right? Does that mean anything?
Well, it means that you intend that to be a trademark. It doesn't have legal significance in most countries. Now, there's a danger to doing that. If you put a TM next to something that really isn't a trademark, all it does is describe your product, and somebody else was using that before you or had prior rights, you lose the ability to argue that it really isn't a trademark. And so you need to be careful. Only use that with things that really do identify the source of the product, because that's what a trademark does.
Yeah.
In fact, trademarks started out as the original consumer protection law. They really weren't, trademarks weren't considered the property of the trademark owner. They were something that the public could rely on. When they saw a particular brand on leather goods or on metal working back in the ancient times, they could depend on the quality of that work because they knew where it came from. And it was only over time that it became an intellectual property of the craftsman.
Okay, and then what is the difference between registered and a trademark?
A registered mark is in many of in the Commonwealth countries that have laws based on the British Commonwealth law. You obtain rights just through using the mark. These are common law rights, but they're local. They only exist where you're doing business. And if somebody else used the same mark somewhere else where you weren't doing business, they would get the rights in that area. So you register the mark, and it basically prevents that from happening. Now, in other parts of the world, in order to have rights in the mark at all, you have to register it with the government agency in that particular country.
Okay, so, and for registered, you have to pay for it. TM, anyone can put on.
TM, anyone can put on. But recognize that in most countries, that doesn't give you any enforceable rights.
Okay, and so what can people do, for instance, for web ideas or design, or I heard, for instance, if as soon as you record a song and you are the copyright owner
That's
of it
right.
automatically.
Now, you've got different forms of protection for different types of intellectual property, and you want to use all of them that are applicable. For example, with your products, you've got both copyrights and trademark protections that you can rely on. Copyrights are automatic. As soon as you fix the work in tangible form, put it on paper, record it, make some tangible form, you have a copyright.
Okay.
So you can rely on those to the extent that copyright protects. Now, what copyright will do is prevent people from making direct copies of your work. Now, it doesn't prevent them from driving information from the work. If you're talking about a written article, for example, and using that, they couldn't copy the words. They couldn't copy the design.
But for instance, I could read your book on protecting your assets and put it in my own phrase, but I'm not allowed to copy it word for word.
That's exactly right. that's the nature of the copyright.
Okay, perfect. And what do you feel about, you know, in the U.S. especially, it's the music is being downloaded illegally, whereas in this region it was always copied anyway, right? So what do you see? What's your thoughts on that?
You know, from my perspective, making those copies are theft.
Yeah.
And what you'll find is that people are going to be a whole lot less likely to create the music if they can't make money from it. You know, there's some people that will create just for the sake of creating, but there are a lot of people that won't. And making money from their creations drives the next creation. So I think in the long term, the thievery will be destructive.
Absolutely agreed. Because as someone who's in the creative business, I wasn't in. You know, you can't go and pursue your passion unless you've got some protection on it, right? Because what's happened is, if you have a job and you do it on the side, it's doable. But you know, this is what you're getting a lot more in the States, right?
Let's take a look at the Dark Ages,
yeah.
Back when the churches and the guilds really controlled all of technology. Okay. I'm talking about centuries ago. Well, technology didn't advance during that time because they kept everything secret. And that was something that the U.S. recognized in their Constitution. They built into the Constitution the copyright system and the patent system to provide incentive to authors and inventors to make their works public, to give them an incentive to teach the public how to use their work and to get the information out to the public. In return for that, they give them a limited time period when they can keep people from using it. After that time, anybody can use it. And during the time, the people can build and improve on the inventions and information.
How long is copyright on a book, for instance?
In the U.S., it's the life of the author plus 75 years.
After the author dies?
After the author dies.
Okay, and a book, let's say if someone publishes a book in the United Arab Emirates, they could they could send it to the U.S., or how would it work?
Yeah, well, typically you would license a publisher in the U.S. To publish the book there. They would translate it into English if it wasn't written in English,
yeah,
and publish it there.
Okay. Okay, awesome stuff, Michael. This is really fascinating because it is the intellectual era, as it were, and it's full of, now it's ideas more than having the money.
Well, I'll give you some statistics. More than 80% of the Standard & Poor's built industry in the U.S. is the value is intellectual property. More than 80%.
Wow.
In Europe, I think it's 73%. In China, it's about the same.
Wow.
So it's reversed. Only 20 years ago, most of the value was intangible assets. Now it's all intangibles. It's all intellectual property.
Wow. And actually, what about China? Because you're seeing China go through this transition,
yeah,
right?
I would have assumed that China was still more on the tangible side, but they actually, I think, had a higher percentage of intangible value than Europe did.
Wow. Okay, that's great, Michael. Michael, thanks a lot for your time. Where can people find out more about yourself?
Well, they can go to techpresspublishing.com.
Yeah. Yeah. techpresspublishing.com. Yeah.
Or mlechter.com.
Okay, great stuff, Michael. Thanks again for your time, and we'll catch you next time on Webpreneur University. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.